The stars glittered like scattered diamonds against the void as the Zandari scout ship, Vortex Dagger, sliced through the darkness of neutral space. Captain Shailen stood with perfect posture on the command deck, his tall, slender frame silhouetted against the vast observation window. His violet eyes, characteristic of the Zandari elite, scanned the tactical displays floating in translucent holograms before him. The border region between the Raxan Empire and Human Alliance territories had been quiet for weeks, but intelligence suggested unusual activity in this sector. "Status report," Shallan commanded, his dual-toned voice reverberating with the natural harmonic quality of his species. Lieutenant Arvin, the science officer, looked up from his console. Unlike the captain's confident demeanor, Arvin's posture betrayed a hint of apprehension. His long fingers danced over the holographic controls as he responded. "All systems optimal. Captain, long-range scanners are at maximum sensitivity. We've detected no vessels within 2 light minutes of our position." He hesitated. "However, there's an unusual radiation pattern emanating from the Tycho Nebula. It doesn't match any known natural phenomenon in our database." Shallan's attention shifted to the swirling cosmic gas cloud, visible on the edge of their sensor range. The Tycho Nebula had always been a navigational hazard, its magnetic storms and plasma clouds interfering with communications and sensor arrays. It was precisely why this area remained largely unpatrolled, a perfect blind spot between empires. "Magnify that sector," he ordered. The holographic display zoomed in, revealing a faint energy signature pulsing through the cosmic dust. Commander Velthar, the security officer, joined them at the tactical display, his scarred face tight with suspicion. "That's an artificial signal pattern," Velthar noted, pointing to the rhythmic fluctuations. "Crude, but definitely not natural." Shallan's mandibles clicked in contemplation, a gesture equivalent to a human stroking their chin. The Vortex Dagger had been dispatched on a routine reconnaissance mission. Their orders were clear: gather intelligence about unusual activity in this neutral zone, but avoid engagement. The Raxan High Command was preparing for a potential expansion into what they considered contested territories, but they needed updated strategic information before committing their war fleets. "Could it be a distress signal?" Arvin suggested, adjusting the sensor arrays. "The pattern contains modulated information packets, primitive by our standards. But..." His words cut off as the main screen suddenly filled with a grainy, distorted image. The hologram flickered, struggling to maintain coherence through the nebula's interference. What materialized was the visual equivalent of a desperate cry for help: a damaged vessel. Its hull breached in multiple locations, drifting listlessly through space. The transmission was accompanied by an audio message so garbled that even their advanced translation algorithms struggled to decipher it. "Require immediate assistance. Life support failing. Coordinates. Survivors." The message repeated on a loop, interspersed with bursts of static and data corruption. Shallan studied the image carefully. The vessel appeared to be some kind of transport ship with an antiquated design. Strange solar sail configurations extended from a battered central hull. Nothing about it suggested military capabilities. "Origin?" Shallan inquired. Arvin consulted his instruments. "Unknown, Captain. The transmission technology is rudimentary. It's using a broadcasting method our systems consider obsolete by at least 2 centuries. The encryption is practically non-existent." Velthar snorted dismissively. "Probably some primitive species cargo vessel caught in the nebula storms. Not worth our attention." Shallan remained silent, weighing his options. Their orders were to avoid detection and engagement, to simply observe and report. And yet, something about this situation felt wrong. The Raxan Empire had built its glory on conquest. Yes, but also on the principle of technological superiority. They didn't prey on the truly weak. There was no honor in that. But they didn't offer charity either, especially not in contested space. The signal's point of origin is within the nebula, Arvin reported. Approximately 20 minutes at standard drive. It could be a trap, Shallan mused aloud. The humans have been unusually quiet along the borders recently. Velthar laughed harshly. Humans? Their technology is barely more advanced than this derelict. Their ships would be no match for even our scout vessel. Shallan was less certain. Intelligence reports on human military capabilities were surprisingly sparse. They had fought a devastating civil war amongst themselves a decade ago, and since then, their outward expansion had slowed considerably. The Raxan analysts attributed this to internal recovery efforts. But Shallan had always wondered if there was more to the story. The captain made his decision. Set course for the signal's origin. Maintain defensive posture and cloak engaged. We'll observe from a safe distance first. Captain, Velthar protested, our orders. Our orders are to gather intelligence. Shallan cut him off. This signal could provide valuable information about activities in this sector. If it's a genuine distress call, we'll document and report. If it's something else. He let the implication hang in the air. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency as the Vortex Dagger altered course, its powerful engines humming as they accelerated toward the nebula. The sleek scout ship was one of the pride of the Raxan fleet, fast, agile, and equipped with the latest stealth technology. While not a warship per se, it carried enough armaments to defend itself against most threats. As they approached the nebula, the ship's sensors began struggling against the electromagnetic interference. Visibility dropped significantly, and navigation became increasingly reliant on short-range scanners. Captain, I'm detecting traces of artificial gravitational distortion ahead, Arvin reported, his expression puzzled. It's as if something massive was there recently, but the signature is fading. Survivors could have abandoned their vessel, Velthar suggested. Or been rescued already. By whom? Shallan wondered aloud. We're the only registered Raxan vessel in this sector, and it's well outside normal trade routes. The answer materialized before them as they emerged from a particularly dense cloud of cosmic dust. There, drifting in the eerie purple glow of the nebula, was the vessel from the transmission. Up close, it looked even more decrepit, its hull pockmarked with what appeared to be micrometeorite impacts. Its solar sails partially collapsed, and several sections venting small plumes of gas into space. Life signs, Shallan asked. Arvin's fingers flew over his console. Difficult to determine through the interference, but I'm detecting minimal power signatures and possible biological readings. The vessel's design is peculiar. It doesn't match any known configuration in our database. Velthar had moved to the weapons station, his posture betraying his eagerness. Captain, this vessel would make an easy capture. We could extract valuable intelligence about whoever operates in this region. Several junior officers nodded in agreement, already calculating how such a prize would elevate their standing upon return to Raxan space. Shallan felt their anticipation, the hunger for glory that defined their species' warrior culture. Hold position at 500 units, Shallan ordered. Continue scanning. Something about this doesn't feel right. Captain, Arvin interjected, his voice suddenly tense. I'm detecting anomalous energy readings from the vessel. They're fluctuating in a highly irregular pattern. Before Shallan could respond, the seemingly crippled vessel before them began to change. What had appeared to be damage to the hull now revealed itself as cleverly disguised weapons ports. The collapsed solar sails retracted smoothly into the hull, revealing polished armor, plating beneath the facade of deterioration. Most alarming of all, sections of the ship that had appeared to be venting atmosphere were actually dispersing a fine metallic mist that began to coalesce into a shimmering field around the vessel. Raise shields! Evasive maneuvers! Shallan barked, but it was already too late. The transformation was complete in seconds. Where moments before had floated a seemingly helpless transport vessel, now hovered a sleek, deadly warship. Its true form was revealed. A massive vessel at least 5 times the size of the Vortex dagger, with multiple weapons arrays now tracking their position with unerring precision. "Impossible," Velthar whispered. All bravado evaporated. "Our sensors should have detected—" "Stealth technology," Arvin interrupted, his voice trembling as he analyzed the readings. "Far beyond our own capabilities. They were masking their true signature using some kind of quantum field manipulation I've never encountered before." The alien warship's designation became visible as illumination systems activated along its hull. Aegis Sentinel in human script, accompanied by the emblem of the Human Alliance. "Humans?" Velthar exclaimed in disbelief. "But their technology is supposed to be—" "Evidently not what we thought," Shallan cut him off, struggling to maintain his composure in the face of this shocking development. "Weapon status?" "Plasma cannons charged and ready." "But—" Arvin hesitated. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple targeting locks on our critical systems. Their weapons are— They're using gravitational weaponry." Gravitational weapons were theoretical in Raxan military science, devices that could manipulate the fabric of space-time itself to create crushing forces or disrupt ship systems without conventional explosives. The Raxan Empire had research programs dedicated to such technology, but was decades from practical implementation. "Open communications," Shallan ordered, his mind racing to find a way out of this trap. Before his communications officer could comply, every display on the bridge suddenly flickered, then stabilized to show the interior of the human vessel's command center. A woman stood at its center, olive-skinned with dark hair pulled back severely from her face. Her uniform was simple, but immaculate, adorned only with subtle rank insignia. Her expression was neither triumphant nor hostile, merely watchful, evaluating. "This is Captain Mara Blake of the Human Alliance vessel Aegis Sentinel," she stated, in perfect Zandari language. "Your vessel has violated neutral space agreements and approached a Human Alliance ship under false pretenses. Power down your weapon systems immediately." Shallan straightened to his full height, determined to maintain dignity despite the obvious tactical disadvantage. "This is Captain Shallan of the Raxan Empire scout ship Vortex Dagger. We detected a distress signal and approached to investigate. If we have violated any territorial boundaries, it was unintentional." The human captain's expression didn't change. "We both know that's not entirely accurate. Captain Shallan, your vessel's stealth mode was engaged. Weapon systems were primed, and your course has taken you progressively deeper into territory your own empire agreed would remain neutral in the Arcturus Accords." "The Arcturus Accords are a temporary measure," Velthar interjected hotly. "And they don't preclude reconnaissance missions." A slight smile touched Captain Blake's lips. "Indeed. Just as they don't preclude us from protecting our interests with appropriate force when threatened." As if to emphasize her point, a series of smaller craft suddenly appeared on the Vortex Dagger's sensors, vessels that had been completely invisible until this moment. 37 escort vessels, Arvin reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "All with active weapons signatures aimed at our critical systems." Shallan felt a cold sensation spreading through his core. The human fleet had been there all along, completely invisible to their supposedly advanced sensors. Everything he thought he knew about human military capability was evidently wrong, catastrophically wrong. "As a gesture of good faith," Blake continued, "I'm transmitting navigational coordinates for your safe departure from this region. I suggest you use them." The tension on the bridge was palpable. Velthar's hand hovered near the weapons controls, his warrior instinct screaming for action despite the overwhelming odds. "If we fire," Shallan stated quietly, "what happens?" Blake's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "We've targeted your propulsion and weapon systems with precision gravitational disruptors. Your vessel would be immobilized but intact. No casualties. We prefer it that way. You expect me to believe you could disable us without destruction? Velthar scoffed. In response, Blake nodded to someone off-screen. Instantly, the Vortex dagger shuddered as its port maneuvering thrusters went offline. There had been no visible weapon discharge, no energy signature, nothing to indicate an attack except the sudden failure of a critical system. The next target will be your main power core, Blake stated calmly. Again, the effect will be temporary and non-lethal, but you will be stranded here until we decide to restore functionality. Shallan raised a hand to silence Velthar's impending outburst. The human technology was clearly far beyond what Raxan intelligence had reported. Their gravitational weapons could selectively disable systems without firing a single conventional shot. The implications were staggering and terrifying. You've made your point, Captain Blake, Shallan acknowledged. We will withdraw as suggested. Blake nodded. Wise decision. Oh, and Captain Shallan, when you report this encounter to your high command, and I know you will, please convey a message from the Human Alliance. Shallan waited, his mandibles tight with tension. We have no interest in territorial expansion or conflict with the Raxan Empire, Blake continued. But we will defend what's ours with all necessary force. The frontier worlds your strategists have been eyeing are under our protection. They're populated by sentient beings who have requested our aid. Any aggressive action against them will be met with the full might of the Alliance. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge of the Vortex dagger in stunned silence. Moments later, their port thrusters came back online, functioning as if they had never been disabled. Orders, Captain, the navigation officer asked uncertainly. Shallan stared at the imposing silhouette of the Aegis Sentinel, its true form now fully revealed, sleek, deadly, and clearly the product of a civilization whose technological advancement had been severely underestimated. Plot a course back to Raxan space, he commanded quietly, using their provided coordinates. Captain, Velthar protested. We can't just retreat with our tails between our legs. The High Command. We'll need to know exactly what we're facing. Shallan completed the sentence. This isn't a battle we can win. Commander, not here, not now, and perhaps not for a very long time. As the Vortex dagger gracefully turned away from the human fleet, Shallan couldn't help but wonder how many other human warships, like the Aegis Sentinel, were out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting. The Raxan Empire had been planning expansion based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their potential adversaries' capabilities. That misunderstanding could have led them into a war they were woefully unprepared to fight. The journey back to Raxan space was tense and quiet. The crew, once eager for glory and conquest, now processed the sobering reality of what they had witnessed. Arvin worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of data they had managed to gather about the human vessel and its incredible technology. The gravitational weaponry alone is beyond anything in our theoretical models, he reported during one of their strategy sessions. They've somehow developed practical applications for principles our scientists have only begun to explore. And their stealth technology. It's not just advanced cloaking. They're manipulating quantum fields to present false sensor readings. Shallan listened intently, building a mental picture of the technological gap they were facing. And the escort vessels? Arvin's expression grew even more troubled. Based on what little we could detect once they revealed themselves, each one carries firepower comparable to our mid-sized cruisers. They remained completely invisible until they chose to be seen. 3 weeks later, Shallan stood before the Raxan High Command in the Grand Council chamber on the Imperial homeworld. The massive circular room was designed to intimidate, its soaring ceiling lost in shadows, its walls adorned with the banners of conquered worlds, its elevated central platform ensuring that those who gave testimony looked up at their leaders with appropriate deference. The 9 members of the High Command regarded Shelon with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. Fleet Admiral Zerath, the most decorated military leader in the Empire, leaned forward. His ancient face creased with disdain. "You expect us to believe," he began, his voice gravelly with age and augmentation, "that a species we have consistently evaluated as technologically inferior possesses weapons and stealth capabilities that surpass our own." Shelon stood firm. "I present not beliefs but facts. Admiral, the data has been verified by our best analysts." He gestured, and the holographic projector embedded in the chamber's floor activated, displaying the recorded images of the Aegis Sentinel's transformation and the subsequent detection of its escort fleet. "What you're seeing is not a manipulation," Shelon continued. "This human vessel was able to completely mask its true nature until it chose to reveal itself. Our sensors, the most advanced in the Raxan fleet, were utterly blind to its capabilities." Supreme Commander Trelak, known for his aggressive expansion policies, waved a dismissive hand. "One advanced vessel doesn't constitute a fleet. Perhaps they've developed a prototype or captured technology from another species." "With respect, Commander," Shelon countered, "the human captain made it clear this was not an isolated case. Their words and actions suggested a confidence that could only come from knowing they held overwhelming superiority." He nodded to Arvin, who had been permitted to accompany him as a technical expert. The science officer activated another holographic display, this one showing detailed analysis of the gravitational weapon system that had disabled their thrusters. "The precision required for this kind of selective system disruption is extraordinary," Arvin explained. "They didn't simply fire an EMP or overload our circuits. They manipulated gravitational fields with surgical precision to temporarily alter the physical properties of specific components within our ship. The technological implications are profound." A murmur ran through the chamber as the High Command members consulted with their advisors. Shelon waited patiently, knowing that what he was asking them to accept challenged centuries of Raxan superiority doctrine. Grand Strategist Vela, the only female member of the High Command and renowned for her analytical mind, spoke next. "Captain Shelon, you've served the Empire with distinction for many years. Your record is impeccable. Yet you come before us with information that, if acted upon, would require a fundamental reassessment of our expansion strategy. The resource-rich frontier worlds we've been preparing to claim would remain beyond our reach if we accept your evaluation of human military capability." "I understand the implications, strategist," Shelon acknowledged. "I would not present this assessment if I were not absolutely convinced of its accuracy." "And what would you have us do?" Admiral Zerath demanded. "Abandon our rightful expansion? Show weakness before these humans?" Shelon chose his next words carefully. "I would have us reconsider our definition of strength, Admiral. The humans could have destroyed the Vortex Dagger with minimal effort. Instead, they chose restraint. They demonstrated their superior capability, while explicitly stating they have no territorial ambitions against us. They seek only to protect the frontier worlds that have requested their aid." "Requested their aid?" Commander Trelak scoffed. "Those primitive species are in no position to choose their protectors." "And yet they did," Shelon replied evenly. "Perhaps that, too, is something we should consider. The humans appear to have formed alliances rather than conquests. It's a different approach to expansion, one that potentially grants them resources and loyalty we might not obtain through force alone." The chamber fell silent as the High Command absorbed this perspective. It ran counter to 5 centuries of Raxan imperial doctrine, which held that superior strength justified dominion. After a long pause, Strategist Vela spoke again. "What do you recommend, Captain?" Shelon took a deep breath. "A temporary halt to our expansion plans in sectors adjoining human influence. a comprehensive reassessment of their technological capabilities and diplomatic stance, and perhaps preliminary diplomatic outreach, not from a position of weakness, but from one of mutual respect. The suggestion was met with expressions of shock and outrage from several high command members. Admiral Zerath rose halfway from his seat, mandibles flaring in anger. "This is cowardice disguised as strategy. One encounter with a human vessel, and you would have us abandon centuries of imperial doctrine?" "I would have us survive, Admiral," Shallan replied firmly. "History is littered with the remains of empires that failed to adapt when faced with superior force." For the next 3 hours, the debate raged within the council chamber. Shallan and Arvin were questioned repeatedly, their data scrutinized, their motivations challenged, yet the evidence they presented was irrefutable. The humans possessed technology far beyond what Raxan intelligence had estimated, technology that could render the Empire's military advantage obsolete. Finally, Overlord Kraxus, the nominal head of the High Command who had remained silent throughout the proceedings, raised a hand for quiet. "Captain Shallan," he intoned, his ancient voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying throughout the chamber. "You have given us much to consider. Your courage in bringing this information forward, knowing it would be met with resistance, is noted." He turned to his fellow commanders. "We cannot dismiss this evidence, no matter how uncomfortable it makes us. Our expansion plans for the frontier sectors will be temporarily suspended, pending further intelligence gathering. We will increase our technological research efforts, particularly in the areas of gravitational physics and quantum field manipulation." Admiral Zerath began to protest, but Overlord Kraxus silenced him with a gesture. "This is not retreat, Admiral. This is prudence. The Raxan Empire has not survived for millennia by rushing blindly into conflicts it cannot win." He turned back to Shallan. "You will be assigned to lead a specialized task force dedicated to assessing human military capabilities and developing countermeasures. Your experience with their technology, however brief, makes you uniquely qualified." Shallan bowed deeply, recognizing both the honor and the immense responsibility being placed upon him. "I serve the Empire, Overlord." "Indeed you do," Kraxus agreed. "And today, you may have saved it from a grievous error." Dismissed. As Shallan and Arvin left the council chamber, the science officer leaned close. "Do you think they truly understand what we're facing?" he asked quietly. Shallan considered the question. "They understand enough to be cautious. For now, that will have to suffice." "And the humans? What do you think their next move will be?" Shallan recalled Captain Blake's calm confidence, her precise control of overwhelming force, and her clear message of defensive rather than offensive intent. "I believe they'll wait," he replied. "They've shown us their capability. Now, they'll watch to see what we do with that knowledge." The two officers walked in silence through the grand corridors of the Imperial Palace, both contemplating the fundamental shift that had occurred in the balance of power. The Raxan Empire had always defined itself by its technological and military superiority. Now, for the first time in centuries, it faced a potential adversary that might surpass it in both regards. For Shallan, the implications extended beyond military strategy. The humans had demonstrated not only advanced technology, but a different philosophy of power, one that employed restraint alongside strength. It was a concept foreign to Raxan doctrine, yet he couldn't deny its effectiveness. The Aegis Sentinel had achieved its objective without firing a single conventional shot or causing a single casualty. Perhaps, Shallan reflected, there was something to learn from this encounter beyond mere technological assessment. Perhaps the greatest strength lay not in domination, but in knowing precisely when and how to apply force, and when to withhold it. Back aboard the Aegis Sentinel, Captain Mara Blake reviewed the after-action reports in her private quarters. The Zandari vessel had departed exactly as instructed, following the safe corridor they had provided back to Raxan space. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Blake called. Lieutenant Parker, her tactical officer, stepped inside, holding a data tablet. Final analysis of the encounter, Captain. All systems performed within expected parameters. The gravitational disruptors were particularly effective. The selective shutdown was achieved with 99.7% precision. Blake nodded approvingly. And the stealth field generators? Maintained perfect integrity until deactivation. Their sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to see. Nothing more. Good. Blake accepted the tablet, quickly scanning the technical details. And your assessment of their response? Parker considered the question. The Zandari captain showed remarkable restraint, given their cultural predispositions. Intelligence profiles suggested a 68% probability of aggressive response when confronted. But Captain Shaylan defied those expectations. Yes, Blake agreed thoughtfully. He struck me as perceptive. He recognized the strategic reality quickly and adapted accordingly. Do you think it will make a difference? Parker asked. Once he reports to their high command? Blake set down the tablet and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. The Aegis Sentinel was already far from the encounter site, its fleet of escort vessels once again dispersed and invisible. Hard to say. The Raxan Empire has maintained its expansionist doctrine for centuries. Cultural inertia of that magnitude doesn't change overnight. She paused. But sometimes. All it takes is one voice of reason in the right place at the right time. And if they don't listen to reason? Blake's expression hardened slightly. Then, we demonstrated only a fraction of our capabilities in this encounter. The gravitational disruptors were operating at minimum power. The quantum torpedoes remained armed, but unfired. The full escort fleet remained at passive status. She turned back to face her tactical officer. I prefer the diplomatic approach. Lieutenant, it's cleaner, more efficient, and spares lives on both sides. But if diplomacy fails, the Raxan Empire will discover that what they witnessed today was merely our opening statement. Parker nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. The human alliance had emerged from its civil war transformed, technologically advanced beyond what any outside observer had realized, and philosophically united in its determination to never again suffer the horrors of full-scale conflict. "Will you be informing Alliance Command of the encounter?" he asked. "Already done," Blake confirmed. "They're increasing surveillance along all Raxan border sectors. If they're smart, they'll reconsider their expansion plans. If not," she shrugged slightly, "we'll be ready." As Parker departed, Dr. Celine, the ship's chief medical officer and Blake's longtime friend, entered with 2 steaming mugs. "Thought you could use this," she said, offering one to Blake. "It's the real thing, not synthesized. I've been saving it for a special occasion." Blake accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling its rich aroma. "And this qualifies as special? Preventing an interstellar war without firing a shot? I'd say that merits breaking out the premium stash." Celine settled into the chair opposite Blake's desk. The crew's buzzing about how smoothly it went. The Zandari never knew what hit them. "That was the point," Blake replied, sipping the excellent coffee. "Demonstrate overwhelming superiority without triggering their warrior instincts. Give them an honorable way to withdraw and reconsider." Celine studied her friend's face. "You're worried it won't be enough." Blake sighed. "The Raxan Empire has built its identity around conquest for 5 centuries. Asking them to abandon that self-image based on one encounter, no matter how convincing, it's a lot to expect. So what happens next?" "We wait," Blake replied simply. "We've shown them our capability and stated our position. The next move is theirs." 6 months later, Captain Shaylan stood on the observation deck of diplomatic vessel Horizon Bridge as it approached the designated coordinates for the first official meeting between Raxan and Human Alliance representatives. The massive ship, designed specifically for diplomatic missions rather than combat, gleamed in the light of an unfamiliar sun. "Nervous?" Arvin asked, joining him at the viewport. Shelon considered the question. "Cautious," he decided. "We're venturing into uncharted territory, metaphorically speaking." Since their encounter with the Aegis Sentinel, Shelon had dedicated himself to understanding human culture and technology. The task force he led had compiled extensive analyses based on the limited data available, but many questions remained unanswered. This diplomatic mission represented both an opportunity to fill those knowledge gaps and a radical departure from traditional Raxan foreign policy. "The High Command remains divided on this approach," Arvin noted. "Yes," Shelon acknowledged. "Admiral Zerath still favors military buildup over diplomatic engagement, but Overlord Kraxus and Strategist Vela understand the necessity of this mission." The development of formal diplomatic relations with the Human Alliance had been a contentious process within the Raxan hierarchy. Centuries of imperial doctrine weren't easily set aside, and many viewed any form of negotiation as an admission of weakness. Yet the evidence Shelon had presented, and subsequent intelligence gathered through careful observation, had convinced enough key figures that direct confrontation would be disastrous. "We're being scanned," Arvin reported, checking his personal device. "Multiple frequencies, some unknown to our systems." Shelon nodded calmly. "As expected. Maintain open posture and full transparency." The diplomatic protocols established for this meeting had specified that both vessels would approach with defensive systems active, but weapons powered down. Trust was a distant goal. For now, verified non-aggression would suffice. As they watched, a ship materialized in the distance, emerging not from faster-than-light travel, but from what appeared to be perfect invisibility. One moment, there was nothing but stars. The next, a massive vessel hung in space before them. Unlike the Aegis Sentinel, this ship made no pretense of being anything other than what it was: a diplomatic vessel of impressive proportions, its hull adorned with the emblem of the Human Alliance. Its design was elegant, yet clearly powerful, with none of the aggressive styling that characterized Raxan vessels. "The Concordia," Arvin read from his data screen. "Their premier diplomatic vessel, launched 3 years ago according to their provided specifications." Shelon studied the ship with professional admiration. Even this non-military vessel demonstrated technology beyond Raxan capabilities. Its perfect emergence from stealth mode, the subtle energy field surrounding its hull, the precision of its station-keeping thrusters, all spoke of engineering excellence. A communication request chimed through the ship's systems. Shelon straightened his formal diplomatic attire, another departure from Raxan tradition, where military uniforms were worn for all official functions. "Remember," he told Arvin and the small delegation that had joined them, "we are here to listen, as much as to speak. The future of the Empire may well depend on what we learn today." As the communication screen activated, revealing the interior of the human vessel and the delegation awaiting them, Shelon recognized Captain Mara Blake standing among the human representatives. Their eyes met across the vast distance of space, and he inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement of their shared history. Blake returned the gesture with the hint of a smile, and Shelon felt a cautious optimism. The encounter that had begun with a deception and could have ended in destruction had instead led to this moment, an opportunity for understanding between species that might otherwise have met only on the battlefield. The diplomatic dance would be complex and fraught with challenges. Centuries of Raxan expansionism would not be easily reconciled with the Human Alliance's determination to protect its interests and allies. Trust would be built slowly, if at all. Yet as the formal introductions began, Shelon reflected that this path, however uncertain, offered possibilities that warfare could never provide. Not merely the absence of conflict, but the potential for cooperation that might benefit both civilizations in ways neither could yet imagine. It had begun with a glimpse of a human warship that had stopped the Zandari cold. Where it would lead, only time would tell. 3 years later, Shaylin stood once again on the bridge of a Raxan vessel, though in circumstances he could scarcely have imagined during that first encounter with the Aegis Sentinel. The ship, Harmonic Convergence, was the first joint Raxan human scientific expedition vessel, designed to explore the mysterious radiation phenomena in the Cygnus Reach, a region previously too dangerous for either species to investigate alone. Captain Blake, now Admiral Blake, following her promotion after the successful establishment of diplomatic relations, stood beside him, both of them watching as their combined scientific teams prepared the specialized equipment developed through their shared knowledge. Your scientists have adapted remarkably quickly to our gravitational stabilization technology, Blake observed. Shallan nodded. And your engineers seem equally impressed with our radiation-absorbing hull composites. It seems we each had pieces of the puzzle. That's often the way with different species, Blake replied. Different evolutionary paths lead to different approaches to problem solving. Together, we see solutions that neither would find alone. The journey to this point had not been smooth. Conservative factions within the Raxan Empire had fought against every cooperative initiative, viewing collaboration as capitulation. Similar resistance had emerged within certain segments of the human alliance, particularly among those who had suffered during the earlier border conflicts with Raxan scout vessels. Yet the pragmatic benefits had gradually overcome ideological resistance. The humans' advanced gravitational and quantum field technology complemented Raxan expertise in materials, science, and propulsion systems. Limited technology exchanges had led to breakthroughs that benefited both civilizations, while carefully negotiated non-expansion treaties had established stable borders and demilitarized zones. "Do you ever think about how differently this could have ended?" Shallan asked quietly, as they watched a joint team of Zandari and human scientists calibrating a sensor array. Blake considered the question. "Often. If you had opened fire when we revealed ourselves, if my superiors had authorized a more aggressive approach, if your high command had rejected your assessment. So many potential paths to destruction," Shallan mused. "And yet, here we are." Blake gestured to the activity around them, humans and Zandari working side by side. Not in perfect harmony, perhaps, but with growing respect and understanding. Perhaps it's proof that intelligence eventually overcomes instinct, given sufficient incentive. Shallan's mandibles clicked in the Zandari expression of thoughtful agreement. The incentive being survival. The most fundamental incentive of all, Blake agreed with a smile. A junior officer approached, offering data tablets to both commanders. "Final mission parameters for your approval. The probe deployment is scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. As they reviewed the technical specifications, Shallan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that moment of shock, when the Aegis Sentinel revealed its true nature to this unprecedented collaboration. The path had been neither straight nor easy. Yet each step had moved both civilizations away from conflict and toward a future with greater possibilities than either could have achieved alone. It had begun with fear. The Zandari ship stopping cold at its first glimpse of a human warship's true power. But it would continue with something far more powerful than fear. The shared curiosity and resilience that drove both species to reach beyond their limitations toward the unknown. As the countdown to probe deployment began, Shallan and Blake stood shoulder to shoulder, representatives of civilizations that had stepped back from the brink of war to forge a different path. The stars stretched before them, vast and unexplored, offering challenges that would require all the wisdom and technology both species could muster. And that, Shallan thought, was a far better use of their combined strength than the war that might have been.